Hi, I'm Claire, and when I turned 18, my mom told me she expected me to have my dead stepdad's baby. She said it in the kitchen like she was asking me to pass the salt. She had a manila folder under her arm, all thick and organized, like she'd been waiting years to show me. She said, "Before Robert died, we saw a fertility specialist. I had them preserve several of his samples. You're 18 now, old enough, healthy enough. You can carry his baby for me." For a second I laughed. I thought it was a dark joke. But she didn't laugh back. Her face was soft, excited even. "It's what he would have wanted," she said. "Robert had died when I was 8. He was a kind man, taught me to ride a bike, cheered at my school plays. Mom never recovered after the crash. She still set his place at dinner every night, still talked to his photo on the mantel like he might answer back." I looked down at the folder she was sliding across the counter. There were clinic logos, medical forms, calendars, each page meticulously filled out. She'd tracked my cycles. Every month since I was 13. She'd written little notes in blue pen. "Ovulation window, possible date for implantation, keep vitamins consistent." I asked her, "You've been tracking me?" She smiled like I was missing the point. "Sweetheart, I've been preparing. You're my miracle girl. My body can't do it anymore, but yours can. You'll just be the vessel. It'll still be mine and Robert's baby. You're just lending us your womb." I stepped back, feeling the air leave my chest. "Mom, that's insane. I'm not doing this." Her expression didn't even flicker. She started talking about legal guardianship, parental rights, and custody clauses she'd had drawn up. "Everything's already handled," she said proudly, flipping through the paperwork. "You won't even have to worry about the baby afterward. I'll take care of everything." I couldn't get a full breath. "You've planned this since I was 13? "Since before," she said softly. "Since before Robert died." That's when it hit me she wasn't planning a future. She was trying to resurrect a ghost. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I'd misheard her. That she couldn't really mean it. But the next morning, there was a tiny white onesie folded on my bed with a note that said, "For when you change your mind." I threw it in the trash. That afternoon, she came into my room holding baby name lists. "Mom," I said. "Stop." She smiled, almost pitying. "You'll see, Claire. This will heal everything." And that's when I realized my mom didn't want a grandchild. She wanted me to be her womb-shaped time machine. The first time she said, "This is what family does for each other," I should have known things were about to get much, much worse. By the next week, she'd escalated. I came home from my shift at the bookstore to find brochures from fertility clinics spread across the kitchen table like a presentation. There were sticky notes all over them. "Excellent success rates, offers egg extraction, highly recommended by Dr. Feldman." Mom greeted me with the calm tone of someone who thought they were being rational. "I booked us an appointment for Friday," she said. "You'll meet the doctor and see how easy it all is." I dropped my bag. "You booked what?" "For the consultation. I told them you were ready to be my surrogate." I felt my throat close. "You told them, Mom, you can't do that." "I never agreed to this." She tilted her head like a disappointed teacher. "You're just nervous. Once you understand the process, you'll realize it's beautiful. This is Robert's legacy, Claire. Don't you want to honor him?" Her voice trembled on his name, and for a second I almost felt sorry for her. Then I saw the wall behind her framed pictures of Robert that she'd rearranged so he was in every single one. Even my old school photo, cropped to fit beside his smile. "I'm not having his baby," I said, my voice shaking. "You owe me this," she whispered, the softness gone now. "I raised you alone after he died. I gave up my career, my friends, everything. You're my daughter. You're supposed to help me." She was crying by then, loud, theatrical sobs that made me feel guilty even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. When I didn't cave, her crying turned sharp. "You're selfish. Heartless. You'd let Robert's memory die because you're scared of a few injections?" I ran to my room and locked the door. She banged on it for 20 minutes, alternating between crying and shouting. That night, I texted my best friend, Tristan, "My mom's lost it. She wants me to be her surrogate." He texted back instantly, "You serious? That's not normal. That's messed up, Claire." I didn't even know how to explain the rest: the calendar tracking, the fake appointments, the guilt tripping. I just said, "She's not hearing no." The next morning, she left another note on my bed. This time it said, "I forgive you for panicking. I know you'll come around." Under it was a folder with a typed document labeled Surrogacy Agreement. There were spaces for signatures, hers and mine. At the bottom, in neat blue ink, she'd already written her name. When I saw that, something broke in me. It wasn't just obsession anymore. It was control. Ownership. I started sleeping with my phone under my pillow and a chair wedged under my doorknob. And for the first time in my life, I was scared of my mother. The night everything snapped, I woke to the sound of my bedroom door creaking. At first, I thought it was a dream, just the tail end of another nightmare about syringes and hospital lights. But then I saw her silhouette standing over me, the dim glow from the hallway catching something metallic in her hand. I shot upright. "Mom, what are you doing?" She flinched, like I'd startled her. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "It's just hormones. They'll help regulate your cycle. So when you change your mind, everything will be ready." My heart slammed in my chest. "Put that down," I said. She stepped closer. "Don't fight me on this, Claire. I'm trying to help you. You'll thank me later." I screamed. She jerked back in shock, dropping the syringe. It rolled under my bed as I scrambled out of the sheets. "Get away from me!" I shouted, my voice breaking. Her face crumpled into something desperate and childlike. "Please don't make me the villain. Robert's baby is dying with every month you waste." I ran into the bathroom and slammed the door, locking it before she could reach me. She pounded on it, sobbing, her words coming through the wood in fragments. "You're ruining everything. You don't understand. This is love." I slid down against the door, shaking so hard I dropped my phone twice before unlocking it. My fingers finally found Tristan's name. "She tried to inject me," I typed. "I'm in the bathroom. I don't know what's in it." His reply came within seconds, "Get out. Come here. Now." I waited until her footsteps finally retreated down the hallway, then crept out, grabbed my backpack, and stuffed in what I could: laptop, charger, toothbrush, the syringe I'd knocked away. My hand shook so badly I could barely zip it. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath. I avoided the creaky stair, twisted the lock on the front door, and slipped outside into the cold gray of early morning. Every step toward the bus stop felt like walking out of a bad dream that hadn't decided whether to end. 40 minutes later, I was standing outside Tristan's apartment, still in my pajamas, shivering. When he opened the door, I collapsed into his arms and started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. He sat me on the couch, handed me water, and said quietly, "You're safe now." But sitting there, staring at the bruises on my arms from where she'd grabbed me earlier that week, I realized something horrible. My mother hadn't just lost her mind. She'd lost the ability to see me as a person. And that syringe in her hand was proof. By the time the sun came up, I was still sitting on Tristan's couch, wrapped in one of his old hoodies, staring at nothing. He'd stayed up with me all night, handing me tissues and just letting me talk. I told him everything: the fertility folder, the fake appointments, the guilt trips, the night she stood over me with that syringe. Saying it all out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. He said quietly, "Claire, that's not just controlling. That's dangerous." I nodded, but my head felt full of fog. I couldn't process anything except the fact that I was finally out. That morning, we sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and looked up. Adult protective orders, reproductive coercion, and parent boundary abuse. It was like reading my life described in textbook form. Every bullet point fit: manipulation, medical coercion, emotional blackmail. I remember whispering, "I thought I was overreacting." Tristan looked at me. "You weren't." He helped me find a trauma therapist who took emergency calls. Her name was Naomi. She spoke to me over the phone that afternoon, her voice calm and careful, like she was trying to build a floor under me where there hadn't been one. She said, "Claire, what you've described isn't grief. It's coercion. And it's not your job to fix it." She told me to start documenting everything: the texts, the notes, the photos of the baby clothes, even screenshots of her online searches if I could get them. So 2 days later, when I knew Mom would be at work, I went back to the house for the last time. It felt like breaking into my own life. I moved fast, grabbed my birth certificate, passport, a duffel bag of clothes. Then I opened her laptop. The browser history was a horror show. Can a parent use a child's eggs for family preservation, legal guardianship over adult reproductive rights? Even a post on a grief forum asking if she could fulfill her late husband's dream through her daughter. I took photos of everything and deleted the history so she wouldn't know I'd seen it. Before leaving, I stopped at my bedroom door. The baby onesie she'd left that first week was back on my bed, washed and folded again. That's when it hit me she hadn't given up. She was waiting for me to come home and finish what she'd started. I locked the door behind me and walked away from that house for good. When I got back to Tristan's, I sent Naomi the screenshots, the photos, everything. She texted back, "You did the right thing, Claire. This is step 1 in taking your life back." Step 1. It felt like I was finally starting to wake up from the longest nightmare of my life. 2 days later, I sat in Naomi's office for the first time. It was small, soft-lit, smelled faintly of tea. She didn't look shocked when I told her the full story. Just quietly horrified in a professional way. When I described the syringe, her expression changed. "That's not symbolic, Claire. That's an act of physical coercion. You were right to leave." She explained words I'd never heard before: enmeshment, reproductive coercion, parentification. Big, clinical terms that finally made sense of my life. She said my mom had blurred the line between mother and child so deeply she couldn't tell where she ended, and I began. "Your safety comes first," Naomi said, leaning forward. "That's not betrayal. That's survival." We built a safety plan together. No contact in person, only text so everything's documented. No discussion of reproduction, Robert, or anything related. If she violated those terms, I'd consider legal protection. That night, I sat at Tristan's table drafting the hardest message I'd ever written. "Mom, I won't discuss Robert, fertility, or pregnancy again. If you continue to contact me about it, I'll pursue legal options." I stared at it for 30 minutes before pressing send. Her reply came fast, paragraphs of guilt and fury. She said I was abandoning her, destroying her last chance at happiness. She said Robert would be ashamed of me. Then came the part that hit hardest. "If you walk away from me, you walk away from your education. I'm cutting off your phone and tuition help at the end of the month." I just sat there, shaking. She'd found a new way to control me money. Tristan said gently, "We'll figure it out. You can get your own plan. Talk to financial aid. You're not stuck." But that night I barely slept. I kept hearing her voice saying, "You owe me this." The next afternoon on campus, I spotted her across the student center. She wasn't supposed to be there. She saw me, her face lighting up like this was some happy reunion. "Claire, we need to talk." When I ignored her and kept walking, her voice got louder, too loud. "You're breaking your mother's heart. Robert would hate what you're doing." People turned to stare. My chest clenched with humiliation and rage. I didn't say a word. I just kept walking until I was outside, trembling. I texted Naomi, who called immediately and talked me through breathing until the panic ebbed. She said it wasn't just manipulation anymore, it was harassment. That night, I made a decision that terrified me. I was going to the police. Walking into the police station felt like walking into a confession booth I didn't want to be in. My legs were shaking so hard I nearly tripped on the doormat. The officer at the front desk asked what I needed, and I heard myself say, "I want to report my mother." The words tasted wrong in my mouth. They sent me to a small office where Officer Devonley listened while I told him everything: the coercion, the syringe, the stalking on campus. I handed him my phone with the photos of the needle, the texts, the voicemails. He flipped through everything slowly, not rushing me. "You did the right thing, Claire," he said finally. "This isn't normal parental behavior. We'll do a welfare check and open a report." I walked out of there shaky but weirdly lighter, like I just put down a bag I didn't realize I'd been carrying for years. That feeling didn't last. The next day, after the police visited her house, my phone exploded with voicemails. Mom, sobbing one minute, screaming the next, accusing me of humiliating her, of making Robert die all over again. She said, "You've destroyed your family, Claire. You've ruined me." I saved every message, then blocked her number. When my aunt called the next day, I recorded the conversation before answering. She didn't even say hello. "How could you do this to your mother? She was just trying to help you understand your own body," I said. She tried to inject me. My aunt laughed. "You're being dramatic. Family doesn't call cops over misunderstandings." After that, I hung up and cried until I couldn't anymore. Naomi helped me see the pattern. Every relative who called used the same script: guilt, denial, shame. She said, "They're protecting the system that hurts you. Don't mistake that for love." But things got worse. 2 days later, Tristan's landlord showed up angry. Your mother's been here twice asking for you. You can't stay if this keeps happening. I had a week to move out. For 3 nights, I barely slept, just scrolled through rental listings until my eyes hurt. Everything was too expensive or already taken. Then I found a post from 3 students needing a 4th roommate for a rundown house near campus. It was chaos when I moved in: loud music, strangers on the porch, a bathroom I wouldn't touch barefoot. But at least it wasn't her house. Still, I bought a metal lockbox for my documents and screwed a deadbolt onto my bedroom door. Every night before bed, I checked it twice. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the dark certain I heard her voice whispering my name. And every time, I'd press my palm against the lock and remind myself, she can't get in anymore. The restraining order process took weeks. Each meeting with Jeff, the legal aid attorney, felt like picking at a wound that wouldn't heal. We wrote out everything: dates, times, screenshots, photos of the syringe, copies of texts, clinic records. Seeing it all laid out on paper was like staring at proof that my childhood had been a long prequel to this nightmare. The day of the hearing, I sat in court shaking so hard I couldn't hold a pen. Mom was already there with her lawyer, dressed in gray, looking small and fragile. For a split second, I wanted to run to her, to make it all go away. But then I remembered the night she'd stood over my bed with that needle. Her lawyer started first, painting me as a confused teenager exaggerating. Family disagreements. He said the syringe was a vitamin injection, and that Mom had simply been overzealous in her grief. My stomach turned. Then Jeff stood up. He laid the evidence out one piece at a time. The clinic's report that she'd forged my consent. The fertility tracking calendars she'd kept since I was 13. The police photos of the syringe. And finally, my written statement. When it was my turn to testify, my voice trembled, but I told the truth anyway. She wanted me to have her dead husband's baby. I told her no. She wouldn't stop. She tracked my body, forged documents, and tried to inject me while I was asleep. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge stopped writing. When Mom spoke, she cried and said I was destroying her last connection to Robert. She said I was too young to understand love. The judge's face didn't move. "Ma'am," he said, "your daughter's body is not a memorial to your husband." He granted the restraining order on the spot. 100 yards, no contact, no discussion of reproduction, ever. I walked out of that courtroom on legs that barely worked. The sun outside felt too bright, too normal for what had just happened. That night, I sat in my rented room, staring at the document with the judge's signature. It was official proof that I wasn't crazy. But even with the protection order, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me had cracked permanently. Because no matter what the court said, she was still my mother, and part of me would always be that 8-year-old girl who thought she was safe in her arms. The restraining order should have been the end, but trauma doesn't close neatly just because a judge signs a piece of paper. The next few months were a blur of exhaustion and rebuilding. I worked late shifts at the campus coffee shop and took lighter classes, trying to hold my life together one day at a time. Every paycheck felt like defiance, proof that I could survive without her. Then one afternoon, a brown box showed up on my doorstep. No return address, but the handwriting made my stomach drop. Inside were baby photos of me with Robert, and a note in that same looping script: "He loved you so much. He'd want you to carry his legacy." My hand shook so hard I dropped the box. I called the police. They collected it as evidence of violation of the restraining order. Mom got a warning. The contact stopped after that. Mostly. Her grief support group started posting vague, self-pitying messages online about children who abandon their parents in their darkest hour. My relatives shared them, adding comments about how ungrateful young people have become. It was like watching a public funeral for the version of me they wanted: the obedient daughter, the compliant vessel. Naomi kept reminding me, "You're not the villain in someone else's story just because you stopped letting them hurt you." Over time, small things began to change. I got my own phone plan. I applied for financial aid as an independent student, and for the first time, wasn't tethered to her money. I started sleeping not well, but enough. The nightmares about syringes and hospital beds came less often. Then one day, Kay from the fertility clinic called. She said the stored samples had been discarded after 6 months of non-payment. "We just wanted to inform you," she said gently. After the call, I sat on my bed in silence. For the first time since I'd turned 18, I felt the story ending, the physical evidence of her obsession gone, her fantasy finally impossible. A strange kind of grief hit me then, not for Robert, not even for the baby that never existed, but for the mother I'd never really had. I realized I'd spent my whole life waiting for her to see me as her daughter instead of her project. In therapy, Naomi called it grieving the living. It hurt in a slow, dull way, like thawing after being frozen. 6 months later, I moved into my own tiny studio apartment. The walls were bare, the furniture second-hand, but it was mine. I could lock the door. Nobody could come in while I slept. That first night, I sat on the floor eating cereal from the box and felt safer than I had in years. Grandma emailed me not long after a short note saying she loved me, that she finally understood why I'd done what I did, and that she was proud of me for taking care of myself. I didn't respond right away, but I printed the email and taped it to my fridge. Proof that maybe not every bridge had burned. On my 19th birthday, I woke up to quiet sunlight streaming through the window and realized I hadn't had a nightmare in weeks. I made coffee, sat on my second-hand couch, and thought about how far I'd come from that night in the bathroom with my mom pounding on the door, to now, breathing freely in my own space. Healing didn't look like forgiveness. It looked like locking the door, paying my own bills, and deciding what happened to my body finally, irrevocably, mine. Sometimes I still missed her, in flashes the version of her that baked cookies and sang off-key in the car. But then I remembered the syringe, the folders, the way she said, "You owe me this." And the sadness turned to something quieter. Acceptance, maybe? I wasn't her cure. I wasn't her vessel. I was just me. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Spring came early that year, the air soft and full of things growing again. I was sitting outside my building drinking cheap coffee, watching the campus trees bloom pink, when I realized it had been almost a year since I'd left home. A year since the syringe, since the folder, since the night I locked myself in the bathroom and chose myself over her grief. Naomi once told me that trauma ends quietly, not with a breakthrough, but with a moment that doesn't hurt anymore. I think that's what this was. I still have the restraining order, the lockbox, the folder of evidence. I keep them in a drawer, not because I'm afraid she'll come back, but because they remind me of the line I drew, the one that saved my life. Sometimes I pass families on campus, moms hugging their kids, and I feel a twinge of something, jealousy, maybe, or longing for a world where love didn't come with conditions. But then I remember how far I've come, how I built a life from the ashes of hers. I don't know if Mom ever truly understood why I left, or if she still tells people I ruined her dream. Maybe she does. Maybe she always will. But it's not my job to fix her story anymore. Mine goes on. It's quieter, smaller, but real, early shifts at the coffee shop, classes I actually like, friends who don't make me earn kindness. I even laugh sometimes now, the kind that reaches your chest and surprises you. When people ask about my family, I just say, "It's complicated," and leave it at that. Because what matters isn't where I came from, it's that I got out. That night, I stood by my window, watching the lights from the street flicker across the glass, and whispered the words I'd been too afraid to say for a year. I'm free. And this time, I believed it.